Yo, it's me. Call me back whenever you can. Love you, miss you, busy.
Welcome! My name is Masha. I'm 21 years old, and welcome to Homeless, a podcast about how I packed everything up and moved abroad for my studies. I'm currently in the Netherlands. I'm studying creative business, and I'm officially from Slovenia. And I already did my first episode last week. I hope you liked it. Thank you for all the kind messages that you've sent me. And if you haven't, go back and listen to it. Anyway, this week is all about the pros and the cons and which ones outweigh the others. I hope you enjoyed this episode and I hope to see you next time as well. Today we're talking all about what happens after you've moved abroad for yourself, for your studies, or for somebody else. Basically, it's like starting a new relationship. At the beginning, it's exciting, but it's also a little bit scary. And it can feel like a honeymoon, but it's also tough. You're trying to juggle your friendships, your old life and new life, and the relationships between the old and the new. You go through so many emotions, and it can be quite overwhelming. And maybe going abroad isn't for everyone, but if you're thinking about it, I would say pack before you change your mind. Because at the end of the day, it's all worth it. Or is it really? Anyway, welcome back to Homeless, where we're talking about anything and everything related to moving and studying abroad. And last time we opened the season with a quick recap on how I ended up studying in the Netherlands. And this time we're talking about what happens when you actually move abroad and what to keep in mind when moving. So imagine everything's set up. You have almost all of your papers, and all that's left to do is pack up and leave. And to be honest, that's probably the hardest part to do. Although I told you all about my papers and how I struggled to get them, or, well, struggled is a bit of a harsh word. But really, physically leaving, is the hardest one of it all. I still remember my last week before moving to the Netherlands, and I was trying to make this grand what to bring list, which ended up being a complete bust. Of course, there were basics like a toothbrush and a charger, but there were also things like a coffee pot and an English Pons. Yeah, you heard me. In the era of technology and Google, I packed a dictionary. I never opened it, ended up bringing it home on the first flight back. But what I'm trying to say is pack way less than what you think you need. I made sure to pack all my clothes to go with me. So when I got home in the first winter, I had absolutely nothing to wear. So pack smart and actually ask yourself, am I gonna need this? And the list goes on, but one thing that you can pack is all the people and the memories that you've made. And the weeks leading me to moving abroad, I was trying to savor every single second of it. It doesn't really hit you until you're about to leave, but I remember having such a big FOMO moment the moment I left. I sat in the car, excited, but also just thinking of all the things I might miss and all the people that I grew up with in a far distance. And saying goodbye was even more dreadful than I imagined. It really doesn't get any easier. You know how people tell you, oh, you'll get used to it. You do, kinda. But if it's easier, it doesn't really get easier, especially the more you grow up. But that's maybe something I'll open up next time. If you already listened to me, you know that I moved to the Netherlands with zero knowledge about it. I barely knew how Dutch sounds like. I just thought that this was a very progressive country in the north of Europe, at least for me, coming from the Balkans. So let me set the scene. It was September 2020. The middle of pandemic, with me at 18 with zero experience with living on my own and a very positive mindset to me moving 1,000 kilometers away. First of all, maybe you don't know, but as any Balkan family, we made sure to drive all the way from Slovenia to the Netherlands. So I packed all my stuff and closed the bag and hope I didn't forget a charger. As someone who had no idea about the Netherlands, I was a bit oblivious to the state of the world, especially when it comes to housing. And I thought that a €300 room/studio is such a good deal. And it was during COVID, and I had troubles figuring out where to find a room. And of course, I was too scared to ask anyone. but I really wanted to find it on my own. And it's not like I had someone who spoke Dutch next to me to just translate it for me. Anyway, long story short, I ended up renting a room with a shared kitchen in a place that was, well, pretty awful. I remember seeing my mom's face when she walked into the hallway. Not sure if she should actually leave her daughter by herself in a weird shared building. To this day, we still call it the crack house. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this, but yeah, it was pretty bad. I tried to make her feel better about it on the phone every time we FaceTime or every time we called, but yeah, deep down, I knew that like she worried every single night. So I would just say definitely talk to somebody when it comes to housing. And I learned quite fast that that crack house wasn't really a student building, but more of a workers building. To this day, I still can't actually fathom that I lived there for almost 10 months. Of course, I ended up spending most of my time at my friend's place and later found a really nice place through one of my friends. And thank God my building actually ended up being across from the student building, resulting in me being over there quite often. But before that, a new country, a new language, a relatively shit place, a pandemic, and a whole load of homesickness. It's not really what you imagine when you think of studying abroad. But let me break it down, first of all. New country and new language. Of course, it is exactly what I signed up for, but it still doesn't make it any easier to get through it, especially through the first culture shock. And one of the biggest ones for me was probably the bike culture in every single weather condition. In Slovenia, you only bike on sunny days, and that you do for enjoyment, and not a lot of people do it. And you don't go to uni and to work in a storm, which I did a few times, and I'm not proud of it. But it's not that bad, I swear. Even if you don't know how to bike, it's really easy to get into it. You get your first bike and you feel like a true Dutchie. But biking was the least of my problems. Having a shit place during the pandemic was my main concern. Let's just say if I would have accepted the help or just asked for it, that could have been avoided. I don't think it was that bad, but I also have a high tolerance now of how bad a place can look like. I think most of my friends would argue that the place was pretty bad, and some of them still don't know how I made it through. But looking on the bright side, the only way is up after that. So it really just depends on the perspective. And long story short, if you're going abroad, make sure to ask about housing, whether that's asking the uni, students, friends, random people that you see on Instagram. I don't know. Don't hold back because it can cost you a lot. Not even just the money part, but also your mental health. Overall, the first few months were good, but also tough. There was so much happening that we couldn't really realize it at that time. The pandemic forced us to be more online than offline, but it also kind of brought us closer together. I made some of my friends during that time that I still to this day consider my closest ones. And the moment you start meeting new people and making friends, you see you have so much in common that they give you that comforting feeling that I'm not alone, which is what everyone is just constantly searching for. And when that happens, you start detaching yourself from your old life. And that's the toughest part. The longest I have ever gone without seeing my friends or family was probably for just a few days when growing up. Not even. There was probably always someone around. And then from one night to another, I was all by myself. That freedom that I was looking for was there, but there was so much of it at once that I wasn't really sure what to do with it. So enter the honeymoon stage. I miss my family, but the new life was taking over. A new uni, meeting new people, hanging out, filled most of my time. It was also new and exciting, and I was trying to figure out, should I go out and explore? Should I meet up with someone new? Should I FaceTime someone from home? Should I make a to-do list of everything I still need to do? It sounds a lot, but it was happening so fast that I didn't even notice it. Only now looking back, I can actually see that all that was actually happening. So I would say don't pressure yourself to do everything, call everyone, meet everyone, see everything, because you do have enough time. The first weeks are there for you to settle, to meet new people, and realize where the nearest grocery store is. It's to figure out how to do your own laundry, how to cook your own meals, and how to order in whichever language you're trying to order in. And I realized throughout the year that we have this internal pressure of, I need to do everything, otherwise I'll miss out. And you really won't, and you really don't. But I would say try your best at the beginning, push yourself out of your comfort zone, and reach out to the people you can see yourself spending time with. Those first few months or the first year are, of course, just for fun, and they don't determine who you're gonna be spending time with the rest of your life. But who knows, maybe. If you don't try, you'll never know. And the reality is, it's great, but it's also very, very hard. It's extremely hard to move, especially when you love your life at home. There are definitely both pros and cons, and in my case, the pros outweighed the cons, but you can decide for yourself. For me, the biggest pro was probably moving out of my childhood bedroom, because, yeah, as any 18-year-old, I just wanted to move out of my parents' place, live on my own, all of that. And to be honest, it did make my relationship with my parents and my family so much better because I moved away. Because I remember being so frustrated with everything while I was living at home. But then the moment I left, I missed them more than I could ever explain. And I don't know, following your dreams to do something and achieve something, it just gives you so much more satisfaction when you're actually doing it, rather than just being like, oh yeah, I'll do this because everybody's expecting me to do it. And I feel like experiencing a new culture is so much different if you actually live somewhere rather than if you're a tourist. I met so many people that are like, oh yeah, I visited the Netherlands once, the weather was meh. And I'm like, yeah, but it's so much different. I can't explain it because you don't feel at home anywhere. You don't feel at home, but you also don't feel at home at the new home. But at some point, you feel like you have two homes. So it's kind of like a mix, and you can't really distinguish why or how that happened. But at the end of the day, you feel like you're starting this whole new life without your parents, have your own space to make your own decisions, and you have the independence that you wanted. And meeting and getting to know people that you don't know just opens up your mind. You meet new friends, you make new friends, and I don't know, it's so much different than growing up with somebody and knowing exactly what ticks they have. I think it's really important in general to develop your views and education, and I think of course you can do that by studying, but I feel like that mostly happens with experience, and maybe studying abroad is just an easier way to do that. You're really faced with so much at once, but it makes you try even harder because you know you're somewhere else and nobody's there to really pick up after you. For me, it was also improving my English. Maybe you're listening to me and you're thinking, okay, she has an accent, but it's not that bad. But my English since first year, it improved tremendously. Half of the grammar that I have today wasn't even there. I didn't even know how to form some of the sentences. I still don't. I still make a ton of mistakes, but that's beside the point. What matters is that I'm not scared to talk in English anymore and to make mistakes. And you'll notice during this podcast, sometimes I struggle and sometimes I don't know how to finish a sentence. But at the end of the day, I still say whatever I want to say, and it somehow gets my point across, however that is. But there's a few cons with it that come with it as well. I think the biggest one for me was leaving my friends and family behind. I didn't realize it until I was actually on my own, but that one hit way too close to home. It felt so weird because I felt like everybody was doing life without me, but at the same time, I was having this whole new life here without them. I'm pretty sure they felt the same way. And you just have this weird feeling of homesickness, of being alone, and you don't really know if you're alone or if you're surrounded by people but you feel alone. And it's kind of like this overwhelming feeling of this is how life will be like, But I think it's just the feeling of something new, something so new that you don't know where to start with it. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just trying to make people aware that studying abroad is not just sparkles and everything's nice and I'm in this new country. It's also tough. It's tough to sit by yourself and be by yourself. And a lot of people that I know are still struggling to be by themselves. And I'm still sometimes struggling to be by myself. I'm getting way better. And it's just, it's if you know who you are in your 20s and if you're realizing and if you're constantly learning, nobody's going to hold it against you because this is what your 20s are supposed to be about. It's, I don't know, I don't want to have a crisis in 50 years and be like, oh, I should have done this and I didn't. Now is my chance and now I should do it. And it shouldn't be in 30 years. Well, maybe, I don't know. We'll see. But I really just want to say, if you want to do it, do it. This is once in a lifetime opportunity and you'll never be the same age ever again. I think it's such a cliche, but the language barrier is really the biggest one of them all. It's sometimes you can't express your emotions the same way that you would express it in your own language. You can't tell stories, you can't tell jokes in the same way, but somehow you become this new person with this new language, and sometimes they overlap. Sometimes you're completely two different people in two languages. But most of the time, you become so good at translating that you don't even notice that you're switching. I think finding a new routine and dealing with your fears is what comes with the whole experience of studying abroad or living abroad. So at the end of the day, you have to figure out if the pros outweigh the cons. And in my case, they did. And it worked out. My list that I made before coming to the Netherlands, I never included what I'm going to get from being here. And I got so much more than I was able to bring. And at the end of the day, you should be able to do what you really want to do, whether that's working on yourself or traveling or studying abroad or simply just taking time to realize what you really want to do. And knowing there's others in the same boat makes life way easier. And you realize so much about yourself. You learn a lot about the world and how others see it. And it just makes you aware of so much, especially of yourself. Talking about that, next week's episode is going to be something really special. I'm going to bring one of my friends over and we're going to talk all about how our perspectives were different coming in and how much we changed since the first year. So make sure you're there. And don't forget, you're always welcome home here, even when it doesn't feel just right. This temporary home will have to do until you find your own one. We're all searching, so take it chill. I'll talk to you again Sunday at 6.
You're Yeah. It's going fast, huh?